All right, tonight's program is on the history of George Didden greenhouse business. And I'll just move up there. Now, we have had a history program on the greenhouses once before, way back in the early years of the Hatfield Museum and History Society. Do you remember that now? You remember that? You did the program. It was back in September of 1994, 30 years ago, that you did a program over in the old firehouse for the society.
No, I have my own contradict myself.
So we are long overdue to have a program on the greenhouse once again. And with it being the 110th anniversary of the business, it's a perfect time. So please join me in welcoming Dan Ruch and Nell Ruch to present our program.
Hi, everybody.
All right. We are so pleased to be with you all. I basically have grown up in this town. I love Hatfield. We have a great history, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you all tonight. We are excited for the opportunity to share, and if you have questions throughout, just raise your hand or just interrupt, because we'd like to answer your questions if we can. There's time at the end. We're going to see how the time goes. My mom and I have worked on this a little bit, not a lot, but we're going to jump right in. So we're going to just explain a little bit who we are. Let me do the first one.
Okay, I'm Eleanor Ruth Ziegler, born on West Vine Street at 72 West Vine Street. 1938 was my year of birth. And I married Russell Ruch from the house that Dan and his family now live in at 84 West Vine Street. And George Didden is my mother's father. George and Laura Didden was their name. Didden is a German ethnic name, and there's various understandings of whether we called him Bebop, whether he came over as a 5-year-old or his death certificate that Jill checked said he was born here. So I don't really know what the real truth is.
That's another reason to remember history, because we realize even in our business, if you don't look at the history, it's easy to lose it. So this is really awesome. So hopefully we'll be accurate. My name is Dan Ruch. I'm one of the owners now with my brother John. We are 4th generation owners. There are some 5th generations that are in it, and we have some 6th generation kids. You'll see that in a little bit. I live at 84 West Vine Street, right across from the greenhouse, and we'll sort of see that as we go along. Just a little bit of who George Didden Greenhouses is. We've been in business for over 110 years now. We are 4th generation owners with 3 5th generation kids, and I say kids because they're now, in their 30s, working in the business, and you'll see that later. Our customer base is about 50% independent garden centers. And what that means is we don't sell to box stores. So, the Walmarts, Home Depots, we don't sell to those people. We sell to the independent garden centers. Keep the money in the community, local. And then 50% of what we do is landscape contractors. And then about 2% is churches, Boy Scout groups, etc. I know that adds up to more than 100%, but we're optimistic about business. So we primarily serve the Delaware Valley. We actually have delivered as far north as Connecticut, as far south as South Carolina. But it's mainly in the Delaware Valley. We have 3 locations currently. Hatfield, which you're all familiar with, and if you look to your right, you might be able to see it through there. If it was winter, you could probably. But that's Hatfield, Quakertown, and then Zion Hill, which is sort of outside of Quakertown. And we're openly a Christian business with biblical values and practices that guide us. You don't have to be a Christian to work with us, and we don't sell to just Christians, but the way we run our business is with those principles. So a couple years back, we worked on our mission, vision, and values, because out of that come really who we are, and it really directs the paths of the business today. This wasn't always the case. We really worked on this within the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years. But our mission is pretty straightforward. Our purpose is to honor our Lord Jesus Christ through cultivating quality plants and people while providing exceptional service to the green industry. Green industry is basically our landscapers and garden centers and so forth. Our vision is enriching lives for generations. So there is a money aspect of being in business. So hopefully we're enriching people that way, but also in the way that we treat our people. We try to really build people up, and we have great people that we get to work with. So our values are: we honor God by being people of integrity, family-oriented, fun, dedicated, and of course you need to be profitable. If you're in business, stay in business, you got to be profitable.
Unless you're the government.
That's right. They keep on printing. So Hatfield location, this is the one primarily you would be familiar with. This is Vine Street right here. This is Butler. And we're about right over here somewhere, just off of there. So that's our Hatfield location. All right, this is our Didden's North location. So to give you perspective where this is, up here, about 200 yards from this point, down the hill, is 309. So the center of Quakertown would be about 3 miles from this location, going this way, is Quakertown.
And I think they call that area Shelley. Some of you might know that name. It's like that crossroad area.
Or has anybody ever heard of Bubba's Potbelly Stove? Okay, that burned down years ago. That would be off this, right up in there. So I would say less than half a mile would be Bubba's right up there. All right, this is our new location. We call it Zion Hill. There's a little village called Zion Hill on Old Bethlehem Pike. And this was an opportunity where we could expand our business in a decent way. So we're renting this 4-acre facility. This is big, so I'm going to try to explain this without running away with it here. But over here is 309. So this is 309 over here. Down here, down a while, would be Quakertown proper. So 313, 663. Here's Old Bethlehem Pike coming up this way. And on the map, you see Didden's North up here. We own 28 acres there, approximately there. We own 28. We bought that many years ago. I don't even remember how, but it's been a long time.
Well, wasn't the original thought to move the whole greenhouse? Because we had very old greenhouses in Hatfield Borough, and they needed to become more efficient. And I think the sons, Russ really didn't want involvement with it, but once the sons came into the business, the idea was to just modernize and move the whole thing up there. But I believe Richland Township had very strict restrictions of how much could be covered and all of that. So.
Yeah, and also the old greenhouses, we didn't really feel the borough would work with us because, and you'll see some of these pictures, the old greenhouse was like right on the road. And when we first went with the borough, they wanted us back 30 feet off the road, and it just wasn't going to financially make sense. They really wanted us to stay, and when we rebuilt, you'll see some pictures, we compromised at 17 feet, except for the grandfathered in buildings, and you'll see that in a little bit. So right here is the Zion Hill location. Down here, this is a 38-acre property, but we're renting it. We have the right of first refusal, so we'll see where that goes. But what's really cool for us is the distance as a crow flies is only 0.6 of a mile. So we have 2 locations that are very, very close by.
Okay, we'll take a look at the past. The picture on the right, the man on the left is George Didden. The man on the right is John Hendricks. And we're really not sure the whole story behind this picture, but it's a cool picture, isn't it? It's a photo of a very old, thankfully it was labeled with the names of John Hendricks. I remember Johnny Hendricks. He lived in the house that eventually got demolished. Yeah, you'll see that later too. We think this likely was the greenhouses when they started in Orvilla. A lot of cut flowers. Originally, the greenhouse business also did retailing of flower arrangements. And but this is, we called him Bebop, as you see at the top. That was our childhood name for George Didden.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say for many people that have lived here a long time, the original place where George Didden started the business was on the corner of Coffle and Orvilla. Anybody remember a greenhouse being on the corner there? I see one person over there. Okay, there's somebody else back there. Yeah, that was demolished for houses. So that's where the business was originally started.
Isn't that a cool picture? Again, this we don't know. This is almost for sure the Orvilla area, and you can see the structure of growing cut flowers again.
Yeah, we found this picture. This picture is only probably, I don't know, 2 inches by 3 inches. It was tiny. And so some of these older pictures, I would like to get through and digitalize them, you know, because this is super faded, but it's just really cool.
In 1921, my grandparents wanted to move to a start from scratch place. And so they bought this farm in Hatfield Borough. It's a 7-acre farm. This is the house that was on the property, the original part of this house, Larry Stevens, according to the maps, it wasn't on the 1850 map, and it was on the 1875 map. So probably around the time of the Civil War, the first part of the house was built. It was facing the train tracks, and that you can see where the train, maybe you can see where the train tracks are there, and then the trolley line was between the train and the house, where the exercise trail is now. This house we think was built in 4 different sections, but this is, it's so much fun to look at these old houses.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is the original farm that George Didden bought, it was how many acres?
Around 7 acres.
All right, I forget if this is me or you. I think originally had it.
Well, I think what he was heading at, we find it interesting that 7 acres is what is told to be the original size of the historic walled city of Jericho. Do you remember the story of Joshua at the Battle of Jericho, when they went around 7 acres? When you're a kid, you hear about these people marching around the city, you think Philadelphia or, you know. No, 7 acres, where they were walled cities where people would go inside for safety and go out to do their crops. And so that around the original site was around 7 acres of this property. That's kind of fun to know.
Yeah, when we do tours, I actually used to do college tours. So we work with Temple University, Del Val, and they bring their students to us. Sometimes we get interns from it, but I love doing those tours. And my mom does tours with sometimes some older folks. She does either end, the older folks or the little kids. I do the college kids. But anyway, this is really the first picture that we have. I would love if Larry would have any, if he could pass them along. But this is the first we have. This type of structure is called Lord and Burnham, this structure. And these were pretty common in the area. If you're familiar with the area down at Welsh Road, and I think it's Drescher, there used to be a big Lord and Burnham greenhouses. That was the last cut roses that were grown in the area.
Can you show the tops of the houses, and I'll help them identify, because we're used to seeing these pictures, but for that, can you show which one is the Sebesti's house again before it burned? It's the second one.
This one. This one. So this house, what I always point out, what's cool about this house is these houses were 365 feet long, and I would always tell people if you took one step each day of the year, it would take you a whole year to walk. So they were really big. They were, I think, 40 feet wide, and they were really a cool structure.
And I usually say they're longer than a football field, because you know their orientation.
Go ahead, Mom.
Okay, it's another picture of George Didden. This would be Hatfield. And the benches were made of wood at the time, and this is when they were growing cut flowers again. He was known as a very excellent grower. We're not sure who this is, but we think it's a cool picture again. We suspect this to be Hatfield, but we don't know that for sure. But Dan, point out that.
Yeah, just one of the things we were going through this, and it was like the third time going through it, and I realized there's a person here. I don't know if you can see that. We're thinking maybe they're shutting off or on the water, or they didn't want to get their picture taken. But I think that's just a really cool old picture.
George Didden standing outside one of the greenhouses. We think this was house 6, most likely, when it was a Hatfield location.
Yeah, these down here is what's called a wooden flat. And back in the day, I can remember saying as a kid, that is how we would move. You'd put a certain amount of plants in there, and that's how you would move the flats. Wasn't particularly efficient, and it was very heavy. And that comes into play a little bit later in the program.
And they were in clay pots.
Yeah, clay pots.
And we used shredded wood, Excelsior, I think we called it, to keep the pots from banging and clanging as they were put on trucks and breaking.
This is one of my more favorite pictures. So what's happening here is this is being built. This is called the lean-to, is what this was called. Today, in modern construction, we call this a header house, meaning the product would come down through the houses, collect here, and then go to get loaded. This would be a header house. So that concept is still being used today, but here, this is called the lean-to. And over here is the Celesti house, which we mentioned, and it's just a really neat picture. The next picture is going to be taken from this being on top of the boiler house. We used to have these giant coal boilers, and that's how it was heated. And with the other thing, it was sort of in Hatfield. This was sort of noticed, this smokestack, because there really wasn't a whole lot of high things, especially during this era. But the next picture, just is going to be taken from that angle, looking back at us. Okay, so in this building. So right here, give you perspective. We're on top of this. I'm going to give you the biggest landmark we see, which is right here, the main hotel. Okay, here's the old farmhouse where my mom lives and my middle daughter lives. Here's the train coming through there. We asked Larry before the thing. We didn't notice this before. This building right here, we have no idea what that is. And if you have any idea what that is, we would love to know. Because in a little bit, we're going to look at an aerial picture from 1940, and there's no sign of that building. So this is, we think this picture is probably mid to late 20s, okay? So mid to late 20s, this picture. And this is one of the older ones we have. I just think it's really, and down here you can see the lean-to getting built. So it was taken around the same time. I failed to mention, now that I'm thinking about it, is in this picture you actually see them building it. There's actually people down here. I forgot to point that out. So I just think that's really, really cool.
Okay, this is Daniel King Ziegler. Dad went to Hatfield High School, graduated in the very first building of Hatfield Joint Consolidated School when E.B. Launsager was already the principal there. And he was in the first class, and then Mother was in the second class. Mother went to Juniata College, and Dad was teaching school up in Pennsburg after college, and they were expecting their third child, and he was not getting full pay, the whole residue of the awful depression. And my grandfather said, Dan, why don't you come back? I need a foreman. Why don't you come back to the greenhouse in Hatfield? And so Mother and Dad moved back. My sister Laura was born in 76 West 9th Street building also. Dad here is holding the beautiful cut mums, we called them football mums, that Diddens was known for, one of the cut flowers. My dad really moved against he encouraged getting out of the retail total and went just the wholesale route and the growing of plants and selling them. at this point in time, we're still growing cut mums. It's a very labor-intensive thing. They were grown in beds, and then you would need to take all the side buds off of them, leave just the one, so all the strength would go in to make that big full mum. And then many of them were sold over in the New York floral trade over there in New York City. And they were well known for being beautiful, but it became, you thought maybe around the 80s.
Early 80s.
It was not profitable because they were being grown out of country and brought in for less than we could grow them.
Yeah, I think at the end we were selling for $1 stem. And I think when that picture was taken, that they were selling them for $1 stem. So it was no longer profitable. This is one of our very favorite pictures. Now, being on this side, just so you know, it's very skewed. It looks really bad, but I'm going to try to, I'm going to come right around here so I can see this. Try not to. But this is one of our favorite pictures. So we're just going to point out a few landmarks. What is this? What is that?
Water tower.
The water tower behind Bethany, right? Question is, what is this?
Silo.
The old water tower.
I said I thought maybe it was.
We had no idea what it was. I'm like, it looks like a I don't know, a silo for something. Down, this of course is Cowpath here, and down here would be the main hotel. Remember I showed you that building that was big? It appears to us that from that other picture, it would have been right here. There's nothing of it. This 1940, that earlier one was 1925 or 27. So here's the farm that was bought, the 7 acres. When we were talking about walking around Jericho, it doesn't seem as bad when you see it versus, and you see it, you can understand it. This road right here, and you might already have your orientation, this is Talmenson Avenue. And if you can tell, there's very little. I mean, up here, there's just so much farmland there. So, anything else you want to have on that, Mom?
Any questions at all?
This is really one of our favorites. We actually have a whole series. We probably have 10 pictures of this era when the plane was flying around. This is the only one we have digitalized, I think. And I'm not exactly sure where those pictures are. All right. Keep on. Go ahead.
As time went along, Nanny and Bebop didn't spend as much intensive time at the greenhouse. They had a house in Fortescue on the Delaware Bay. Bebop was a big saltwater fisherman, and Nanny wasn't a fisher person at all, but she was a good sport. And we would go down to visit them there. Bebop nor Nanny drove a car, and he always would just hire people to drive him down there. We loved going to Fortescue.
Also, just an interesting thing I find about it, Bebop apparently was very short. I think he was, by today's standard, 5'5", 5'6". So a lot of our old greenhouses were very short, which for taller people, I'm short too, I'm like 5'8", but some people would hit their heads. Anything else you want to say there?
Oh, you can always talk
All
more.
right, we'll keep going.
My mother, the Didden, Carolyn Didden Ziegler, my mother, Bebop first of all, passed away in 1947. And my father was there and became the main one to run the business with Nanny Didden.
Just interesting, let me jump in there real quick. George Didden had 2 children, right? So it was Clarence Didden, and some of you may know, if you know the area again, Limerick Chapel. He helped start that church.
He started it. It was one of the first big churches. People from Hatfield, some of them even went over there to church. And our family didn't. We went to what was the Hatfield Mennonite Brethren in Christ Church, which is now Bethany Bible Fellowship Church. That's where we went. We always took lots of people with us, kids and adults to church with us. But anyway, my dad ran the business, and then what was the minority partner, my grandmother and he were co-owners. And then in 1957, my mother died at 49 of cancer. Extremely hard time for the family, for my grandmother as well. And some of you will recognize the woman on the right, Carolyn Snell. I was on a bunny trail here. I went 11 of my 12 years at Hatfield Joint Consolidated School, and two of my classmates are here. We were in the first class of North Penn's high school district. And when I went to college, I was wanting to go into becoming a teacher, and we were asked at one point what teacher most influenced us to want to go into teaching. And I wrote about Miss Stout, because she was a very good teacher. Well, eventually, after my mother's death, my father initiated a relationship with Carolyn, and she became my stepmother. Now, we could no longer call her Miss Stout, so she said, you only have one mother, you have to call me Carolyn. And well, my mother's name was Caroline, said Carolyn, and Carolyn Stout's name was Carolyn, and we had a good relationship with.
Just another little factoid too. So I knew her as Mom, okay, and we bought the house from her. So that's where we live now. Was Mom's house. She moved up to Rock Hill Community, but she was teacher to my mom and her 4 siblings. And I had her in 5th grade at A.M. Culp School. How weird is that? You know?
Are there some of you that had Miss Stout for a teacher?
There's a couple back there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. She was from Calmer, or on the radio they say Colmar.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is also one of our very favorite photos, and I got to give cred here to Mr. Stevens, because we did not have this picture till he put this on the Hatfield Historical Site. So this is just for us, this is a real gem. Why don't you tell a little bit about the story?
Yeah, some of you would know it, and in case you don't, we were going to tell the story now. There was a hailstorm. Let me first say that, point out number 5 house, please. Number 5 house had already had double thickness glass put in. My father was planning to replace house 4 with thicker glass. And that year, God allowed a damaging hailstorm, and you can see all the pop marks there. And all those glass got broken, and so the insurance covered it. And so Dad used to say it was pennies from heaven. It was very hard in those days, though. I mean, there were crews of people that traveled, like from out in Ohio, to come and climb. They had to put scaffolding on the top of these houses to do, and that was one of the reasons why some changes really had to be taken.
Yeah, I actually, when I was in my 20s, I was one of these type of people that would go up on the glass greenhouse. It was pretty terrifying.
And on the twin houses down there, son Ken, just before he entered college, was on that, and he fell through there and had severe damage.
I think it was like 150 stitches.
It was awful. It was awful.
And they were like that far apart.
This is a college picture of my husband, Russell Ruch. When he grew up in, he was his six of his early years in Lyme, Lexington, across from the Sunoco station, and then when he was 6, their family moved to a stone's throw from the 5 Points intersection in Montgomeryville. And so he went to the Montgomeryville school up to 8th grade, and then went to Lansdale High School, and he was in one of the 49ers in the Lansdale High School class. Went away to college, and he worked at the greenhouse over the summertime, and after I graduated, we were married between my senior year, and he went to college at Taylor University in Indiana. I went to Wheaton College in Illinois. So we, as a married couple, we lived in Wheaton area, and then at the end of my college there, he was asked to be a founding pastor of a church just north of us there in Carroll Stream. and we stayed out there for 2.5 years. At that point, we needed to make a change. I was expecting son Jonathan's birth, and we moved back to Hatfield. My father said, I have a position as foreman, I could use help here, and so we moved back. He had knowledge of the greenhouse business, and that was by God's design, because 3 years after he moved back, my father was speaking in the front of the church, March 2 of 1966. He was telling of a recent missions trip that he and Carolyn, my stepmother, had taken. And he's been speaking around 3 minutes, and he went white and dropped dead. It was memorable. Anybody that was there has vivid memories of it. But it was March 2nd, a really hard time in the business, and so it fell to Russ. And my grandmother, who was 80 at the time, and Dad was 58. Nanny and Carolyn, my stepmother, and the office manager, Evelyn, Paul, and Russ, and the staff all pulled together, not knowing what the future would hold. The business was eventually put up for sale, and it was old greenhouses with diverse crops, and there weren't buyers for it. And so the family all preferred that the business would stay as a business rather than real estate. And so the people were willing to let their share of the estate stay, my grandmother and my siblings and Carolyn. And so the business was bought for $67,000 in 1967 or so. He passed away in 66 when Dan was just 3 months old.
This is early 80s. This picture gives some perspective of particularly the old greenhouses. Right here is that the boiler house we talked about with the smokestacks. This is Vine Street. Here's Butler, here's the train track. We're sitting down in here somewhere across the way here. But it gives you a neat perspective of the old greenhouse here. And at this point, the address was Vine and Butler. That was the name of that then. But this next one is really a cool picture. I'm going to step over here again. Okay, because now you start looking and seeing what is different. So what is this up here? Yeah, or a flying saucer, one of those two. I'm not really sure, but it's something like that. Okay, we'll pick a hard one in the distance, because we'll see. I was able to zoom in on this on my computer on this weekend. What is that big building back here?
Standard price.
The cold storage.
No, this is the cold storage, to give you perspective, would be right here.
Standard press steel down there.
Yeah, it's the Schlosser Steel building back in here. Okay, over here, what's this right here? Hatfield Village, right. What are these? These are pretty prominent in the picture, these buildings. What's that? Meadowbrook, right. Now here's the greenhouse for perspective. Now, this is the exciting one. I think a lot of people remember this. What is this? What's going on down here? What is that? Snyderama. How many people remember Snyderama? Oh, almost everybody. That's so cool. So this was really a really fun picture to get into there. Let me see. Go ahead.
Okay, this is Eleanor on the left, that's me, in case you weren't sure. And that's my husband Russ on the right. In 1979, he and I and our children moved to Newark, Delaware to help a church get started. He would drive back up the old Route 202 before the Blue Route was through, and he would come up on a Monday morning, come back down on Wednesday evening for prayer meeting, and come up on, drive back up. And it was an exciting time in our lives. As our by then we had, a long time before, in 1967, we had our fourth child, The Hatfield plant lady is out here someplace. She's Dorothy. Our second, third born, that's Ken. He was born in 1960. By the way, if you remember the year of your kid's birth, you don't have to remember their ages, okay? You can let people figure that out. He was born in 1960. John was born in 1963, and Dan was born in 1965.
The end of 65. December of 65.
And as the sons would declare their potential interest in coming into the business, Russ gave shares of the business to the sons. And Dar expected to be married, like all young women did in that day. And she felt she would probably go with her husband wherever that was, and so she did not have, is that a fair way to say it, Dora?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. She did not get in on this part of the business being the bigger.
By choice.
By choice, he
By
said.
choice.
So this picture is just to give you perspective. One of the things we realized, we were always at Vine and Butler, so Vine and Butler. And 911 came in, and we had to, I don't know if we declared it or it was declared to us, probably was declared to us.
They wanted the address to be Vine Street because the emergency vehicles would know Vine Street a lot more than Butler Avenue. It actually faces Butler, but they wanted so the official address is 57 West Vine Street.
Yeah.
In Hatfield. That's when that came to be.
And when my brothers and I started to get involved, we realized that this was very inefficient. Okay, I mentioned earlier about our setbacks. Well, this setback is like 0, okay? This was maybe, 4 feet, but we really started realizing really quickly if we're gonna continue on, this is that point that we were looking at moving the business up to Quakertown. We bought 28 acres, we were gonna move it out, but we loved our people here. Most of our business is done down toward the city, so we compromised with the borough and they worked well.
When was the sidewalk put in? I don't remember that when we were kids.
No, it wasn't there when we were kids. There was a cold frame there. And from real old history, the trolley used to go out Vine Street to around Brooks and it's now Liberty Square, the old Applegate Apartments, and at that point it cut across the field. That was before our time, though. That was maybe 1910, 1912, and around that time when they modernized the line. But there were cold frames. That's why we wouldn't recognize them.
So we really realized that to modernize, if we're gonna stay in business, we gotta modernize. So that really made my dad even more want to get out of business because we did not want my dad to assume financial responsibility, and he didn't want to either. So this is actually before we tore it down, and we're gonna see how we tore it down and rebuilt. This is the last crop that was grown in the old greenhouse. These were concrete beds. This house is the one that's 365 feet long, and this was the last crop we did. So we started tearing down the old greenhouse, and we were able to, they wanted to separate out the different materials. Here's obviously metal. It was really cool. One of the really cool things was it was July that this happened, and in July 4th, around that time, we allowed our children to throw rocks at the greenhouse. I don't know if Pep got in on that. You did too? Yeah, because you can never throw rocks, and it was just such a cool sound to hear the glass breaking.
People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
So this picture is taken from my mom's attic. So what I would do is I would take pictures every day, and this is from that angle, so you'll see that. But then as soon as we tore it down, we started building, and this time frame would be probably late October, this picture, and we had to build it as quick as possible. And we made it so that you could have forklifts in there, you could have these metal carts to move material, just made moving a lot easier. Sorry, this is fuzzy, it's not your eyes. It's really fuzzy. But what this is just to symbolize is modern technology. So we run, the greenhouse is all run with an environmental computer. So it's all, and if any of you were at Didden's for Didden's Day, anybody there? Anybody take the tours? Oh, we got a good amount of people. Well, if you weren't there, you should have been. But we hope to do it again somewhat soon. And well, I'll mention Didden's Day a little bit later, but modernization was really, really huge.
This is Dave Dickey, and Dave came to us. Nikki Selesky was working at the greenhouse, and her nephew Dave was just graduating from North Penn High School, and she said to my husband Russ, "Would you give him a chance? He doesn't have right." And here he is. He's been a very faithful employee, and you want to explain, Dan, what's going on?
Yeah. So all I wanted to show with this picture is when we were done. He's watering on a bench. So before everything was on these concrete benches, these benches actually move. So if you came to Didden's Day, went on a tour, you remember the moving benches. So we just wanted to point out. And also, this is Sue Smith, and she's not here. She thought she might be here tonight. But what I wanted to show here is just the concrete. So this allowed us to move big carts in instead of carrying out one or two at a time or whatever. You could literally take a cart, load it up, but the newer structures were just much more efficient.
And the air is heated, so if you can grow plants in it, that's just a bonus. So the growing of hanging plants was possible with these new houses as well.
What I wanted to point out here, again, this is a little different angle than we've been seeing. Here's Vine Street, here's Butler, here's the train tracks. We're up here somewhere tonight. What I just wanted to point out here was what we really started doing is pushing outside production. So there's a bunch outside here and right up here because that's just sort of extra space. So we were able to really do that. The other thing this highlights is this big warehouse. That was a pole barn, wooden structure, and many of you would remember this. So sorry I get teary about this because it was really a tragic thing for us as a personally and as a business, but we are just thankful to the Lord nobody was hurt, because all of us at this point had kids. Now some of my kids are back here in the corner, and they were little, and they would often run around and play in there, so we just very thankful. Also thankful for the firefighters. We've supported them for many years. We actually, for our firefighters that work for us, we pay them to go on fire calls, okay? Now, I'd love to see more companies do that because those firefighters are the real heroes.
What was the cause of the fire?
That's a good question. It was a real windy day, and in the warehouse there would be boxes. So when you would take things out of the box, you'd have the empty boxes. And we don't know what happened, but we are fairly certain that one of those boxes flew into a heater. And a space heater. What actually made this even worse was the timing of it, because in late in the year, you're fully stocked with all of your plastics for the next spring. So it was just a huge, it was. So that was really tragic, but if you saw, that was this end of the year, and this is summer of the next year. So we already had a big steel structure built, and that steel came from Schlosser Steel. So remember, you want to keep things as local as possible. And this is just a real pretty picture. There's really no reason we put this in there. We just thought it was pretty. It's fall, and it was just pretty. So at this point, the house down here we had bought, and we knocked it down to build some new greenhouses. Also over here's getting developed a little bit.
It wasn't a sound house. After Dar had been born, we wanted to make it into a 4-bedroom house, but the back of the house had a foundation that was just stones put down. It wasn't a dug foundation, so we couldn't build on top of it. So eventually the greenhouse bought it and demolished it and did some cold frames there. Everybody can check the orientation there. It's fun to see those old pictures.
Moving along. So in 2019, my brother John and I became the sole owners of Didden. My brother Ken retired from this business, and he bought a garden center with his sons down in Glen Mills. If you know where Glen Mills is, that's called Wedgwood. So if you need to go to a nice garden center, Wedgwood's a good garden center. Soon behind us, we have the next generation. So Kendra's back here in the corner if you want to look at her. So Kendra is my niece. That's my brother John's oldest daughter. And then both my sons are involved in the business. Daniel helps with facilities, and Josh, my youngest here, helps me in sales. So.
The consultants were brought in because, it's really hard. Family businesses don't survive real often because there's lots of things to work out. And so one of the consultants recommended, if I have this right, recommended that they work on a project together to sort of learn to work with each other. And they chose this project of the 110th event, and that was their baby. The three of them developed that, and those of you that were able to, it was a beastly hot day, and we had around 1,000 people that registered there that came, and we often talked about that the Lord controls the weather, and we wondered about it being so very hot, and we thought that, if it hadn't been that hot, we kept hearing of other people that wanted to come, and so we wondered if we would have had 2,000 or 3,000 people, and we could have been just flat out overrun at that point. But it was an exciting family.
Yeah, the kids, okay, they are the ones that planned the event. All my brother and I did was sign the checks. We really did not do anything, so you can't really thank us. You got to thank the next generation. And I wanted a live band, but it got shot down. It's just not like live music. That's right. So this was the welcome table. This is my brother Josh's wife. This is my daughter Olivia, who's in the back, and her boyfriend Joshua here. And Jerry Smith was a fellow that worked with us for a number of years. But it was really a wonderful day. This picture, I believe, is a drone picture. It's either that or Kendra up on top of the fire truck, but I think it's a drone. They worked really hard at this area down here. This was like a sprinklers for children to run through, and I don't know, adults might have run through it too. But while things were going on outside, there was things going on inside.
Yeah, the adults that are with the backs to us are Chris and Ann. I forget their last name. They live on Lambert Street. But there were tours, and then people were given an option of taking some things home with them. They were finishing a tour here on that right side.
And here, this picture is the three oldest of the next generation. So for us, this is G6. So this is our oldest sons, 2 here, and this is Kendra's oldest here.
She has face paint on, that's why she looks.
What's that?
She has face paint, but she's also wet. Her face paint's running off. She has face paint.
Yeah, so early we introduced Davey coming to work for us when he was 18, fresh out of high school. And last year, we celebrated Davey's 50th year working with us. He's been very, very steady. But one of the things is out of our core values is family-oriented and fun. So this is family-oriented. Davey's part of our family. And one of the other cool things we did last year was we went to a Phillies game to celebrate Davey's 50th year, which was, we hired a big bus and we all went down together. Unfortunately, the Phillies lost. They tied it up in the 9th inning and then lost. It was disappointing. But anyway. But we like to have fun, we like to have innovation. This was Blake's idea of getting a little more hype. I just thought that was really, really good. This is my nephew, Caleb. He worked in the business for 5 years. He played high-level football at Rutgers and almost turned professional. He's a big guy, but we really enjoy having fun at Didden's. Whoops, hold on, let's go back. Okay. So one of the fun things we had, and hopefully this isn't too loud, because we're going to play. All right. We had a great time. Everybody made like green things, and it was really a wonderful event. All right. This picture is really in here. My sister back here, Dorothy, took that picture. And
Mom wanted it in there.
yeah, and she wanted this picture in there. So.
And by the way, just to inform you, our pansies are grown cold. And when you get, what?
For the spring.
Yeah, their spring pans are growing colder, and so they're hardened off. And one of the things about growing outside, this wasn't brought out, but our garden centers have really appreciated that. Because if you take a plant from inside the greenhouse and put it out in weather, it can not like that. So by having plants outside early, they harden off a little bit, get used to the colder temperatures. But isn't this a beautiful picture? We're going to move now to the missions, returning to the mission statement. And you might remember that in our mission statement, it says that we seek to glorify the Lord Jesus Christ. And so this is one of the evidences in a very specific way. On Good Friday, it's right before Easter, of course, and my father felt that we couldn't just shut down everything. There's sometimes 3-hour services for people. We couldn't do that for the sake of the business and our customers. So we had an evangelist that came to our church, and he invited him to have, that was the first Good Friday service around 70 years ago, and all of our employees are welcome to punch in and come and sit, or they can punch in and go to work. And so a lot of the times we have people coming and sitting and hearing a speaker. We oftentimes sing 1 or 2 songs and then listen to the historic story of the Good Friday.
We also have customers that'll sometimes come in as well. I don't know if this is going to work. That's mom playing the accordion, the old squeeze box there.
But then we moved to thinking about Christmas, and this is a picture that Dan arranged, I guess, to show the different sizes of the crops. When you buy a plant, and it'll say a 4-inch or 4.5 inch, that's the diameter of the top of the pot. And that's how we identify the different sizes in the greenhouse.
We're going to start picking up a little bit because we're running out of time. But a couple years back, we bought a wreath business. So these are some of the wreaths of just this size wreath. We do over, I think, 4,000. Just that of the PA mixed wreath.
Oh, just that variety. That's boxwood, but yeah.
I know.
Okay.
They're not okay, and we do really large wreaths. This is a 72-inch wreath. This is something you would see on like a Bucks County farm, and they weigh over 100 pounds. They're really, really beautiful though.
At Christmas, we have a Christmas lunch, and we have a tradition of doing a photo of our employees at that time. And some of you might remember our Santa Claus when he was with us. This is Bob Ruch. And one of his twin sons is, you can show Andrew up there. He's been a fire chief here some, and wonderful employee. Our son Ken is in the front left. John is in the middle in the back with his wife Gail, who's our office manager and chief to handle all the kind of bills and stuff. And many of you would remember Willard Kriebel there at the top picture there. And
this picture is from 2006. But right after Christmas, sometimes we see some snow. There's really no purpose of these, just in to show you it's pretty. It's pretty, so we'll just flip it around.
Literally cool. That's the view from my house, and you know, one of the problems with older people living in their own homes is taking care of it, but the sons and the greenhouse employees do a wonderful job of taking care of me when we have these needs. We wanted to try to communicate the historic meaning of Christmas, and this thought came to us of doing banners to put up for the Christmas season. And we have just enjoyed this. Now the Selesky, Leah and Nikki can see this from their house, their modular house that was brought in to replace their house that was destroyed by fire. They can see this at Christmas time. I see another one from around the corner. But you know, there are very few indicators of historic Easter. And so the other year I said, is there a chance of doing banners for Resurrection Day? And because of our whole mission statement, is that the part of it? I get this stuff mixed up. This was developed to communicate the meaning of Resurrection Sunday and Easter. And it's a joy to see this. This is the one that I can see from my home. But we are a business, and we are a business. My dad loved this last slide, if we can get to it.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Technical problems. Here we go. This is actually our last slide.
You can all read it with us. It was formed by the XS Smith, which is one of the companies that did the glass greenhouses. And it identifies all that goes into to producing quality plants. If folks only knew how many, help me read it, you can read it. If folks only knew how many minutes of thinking, hours of digging, days of sunshine, weeks of coaxing, barrels of fuel oil, pounds of fertilizer, bushels of rich soil, gallons of water, and inches of backache it takes to produce a beautiful plant, they would gladly pay the price.
We really appreciate the opportunity to share with you all. Are there any questions? If not, we're going to be, okay, we got one in the back there.
What made George get into that type of business? Was there a background with the family?
Yes. The question of how did George get into the greenhouse business? His father was a grower greenhouse person, and in fact, they had businesses down in Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, and Yaden, where they had greenhouses. There was a Didden's greenhouse down there, and then my grandfather's sister had William Didden Florist, that was a retailer. It's continued on with other people that aren't related. The last I knew, it was still in business down there. But he had experience. He wanted to get out away from the city and come out into the boonies.
Frontier land.
Does that answer it enough?
Thank you.
Yes.
What is a cold frame and how is that different from a greenhouse?
All right. A cold frame generally is it's a box structure more with a covering. It's pretty low to the ground. There's no heat in it. So the heat is produced by generally solar radiation causing the heat. So it's a way, a lot of plants grow really well if they're grown sort of cooler, because, not to get techie, but keeps the inner nodes closer together. So where the leaves come out, it keeps the whole plant stockier. So you'll sometimes see, nowadays, you'll see what are called high tunnels, which are like hoops in a field, and sometimes people grow cold crops in them. You'll see that up at, I think it's A&J, up on R&J Farms does that up near the old Mopac plant. So, but yeah, we don't do that anymore. Nowadays, and some of the pictures would be on there if I would go back, but we do have what are called hoop houses that don't have heat in them. So it is sort of a cold frame, but it's a much bigger scale. So we still do that some.
I'm just thinking that one of the hard things working in the old greenhouses, the glass greenhouses, is where they were awfully hot. There wasn't airflow, it was just the natural convection. You could have open sides and open at the top, and when a storm would come, we'd all go over to take down the air. You had to roar, make those things come down so that the vents wouldn't fly off in high wind. And these newer greenhouses, that's all, the opening and shutting of vents is all controlled with a computer system. And grandson Daniel lives up in East Rock Hill or something like that area, and he has information there and he can tell what's going on. In fact, under his leadership, a big generator was installed just a year or two ago, and which can take care of the electricity. There's a few other wild stories with Tom, but I think we're pretty well out of time, unless there's more questions.
Any other questions? Again, I really appreciate y'all coming out and thank you for